good to be in the house of God together. Have you ever had a conversation where somebody just talked and 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 talked until there was barely any oxygen left in the room? Whoa. I didn't say point out who it was, Washington. And you lean forward slightly and you open your mouth as if to speak and you're waiting for this pause, but there is no pause. They barely take a breath. They don't say, you just don't have a chance to put in a word edgewise. And it's like you're part of a monologue where you're just in the room together and they're just talking and talking and talking. And you're there being a nice Christian and saying, yep. And you're nodding and Have you been? Have you had conversations like that? And if we're honest, that doesn't feel good, does it? When there's just one person and they're dominating the conversation. But now here's the uncomfortable question, and I'm not looking at Isabel. Washington, come on. Come on. 62 years, my friend. 62 years. Yeah. You thought you would learn by now to love your wife. Oh, okay. But have you ever realized that sometimes you are that person? That you are that person that just talks and talks. And you're halfway through a story and suddenly you realize, hang on, that person hasn't spoken at all. Or they begin to share something and then straight away you cut them off and you share the more important thing that you wanted to share. Sometimes we're not listening to understand, but we're waiting for the reply. We're waiting for the chance to reply. And people can feel the difference if we're not really listening. Most people don't need for us to fix them, but they need for us to pay attention. And when someone is genuinely listened to, they speak more clearly, more honestly. When they aren't, they edit themselves. They shorten what they're going to say, and they don't go as deep as they want to. And after a while, they stop trying to communicate. Not because they have nothing to say, it's because they've learnt that they won't be received. And so listening is a basic skill, but without it, trust doesn't grow. An aged care chaplain once said that he asked the residents, what did they miss most about being in an aged care home? And he thought they were going to say, well, their wealth, their freedom, their independence and stuff like that. But they said something that surprised him. They said that no one asked me anything anymore. Yeah, the family comes and visits and the staff is fantastic and all their needs are met. But they ask questions like, have you been, are you eating well? Are you okay today? Do you need anything? Are you comfortable? All functional questions, but they weren't personal ones. And so when somebody finally asked the question, tell me about your life, they would open up and they would share their story, thankful that someone was just willing to listen. And that's what we're talking about, friends. Today's message, it's built on that second letter, Listen with Care, and it's called Love Begins with Listening. And, if I was a smarter, wiser man, I would have thought, well, today's Valentine's Day. But I didn't realize it was Valentine's Day until yesterday when my wife gave me a gift. And I didn't realize, friends, because I don't pay attention to those things. I love my wife every day. At least that's what I tell myself. She might not see it every day, but Anyway, but this sermon is not just for the BLESS acronym that we've got up there, but for all relationships, friends. Whether it's your marriage, whether it's with your children, whatever it is, love begins with listening. Last time I spoke about the essentialness of prayer and the focus of this church to bless our neighbours, to be a blessing to our neighbours through personal evangelism. And we want you to bless them this year. And it starts with prayer. It starts with prayer. If you don't have somebody to connect to, begin with prayer. If you don't know what to say, begin with prayer. If you don't know or are afraid of the consequences and the questions that they're going to ask, pray. Pray, pray, pray. But we need to not just pray, but follow to that next step, to make connections with people, to listen with care. Not to listen casually, and not to listen to prepare your response, but to listen as if you actually love them. Are you following? Listening is not just a strategy to make conversation smoother, and it's an act of love. It's how trust begins. It's before we speak truth or before we correct, before we share anything spiritual, we need to give attention because love begins with listening. Now, if you have your Bibles, let's see how Jesus did it. Turn with me to John chapter 4. And I know many of you have heard this story all of your life, and you could preach this sermon better than me, but I want to encourage you to open up the Word of God and see if you can learn something new today. And you can see what the Lord has to share with you. Because again, this book changed my life. It didn't change my life just by sitting on the floor or closed. It changed when I picked it up and read it. And so I encourage you to love this book, to love the words, and to love the God who wrote it. So, John chapter 4, verses 3 to 8. Notice this. He left Judea and departed again to Galilee, talking about Jesus. Jesus left Judah and departed again to Galilee. But he needed to go through Samaria. And so he came to a city of Samaria, which is called Sychar, and near the plot of ground that Jacob gave to his son Joseph. Now Jacob's well was there. And Jesus, therefore, being wearied from his journey, sat thus by the well. It was about the 6th hour. A woman of Samaria came to draw water. Jesus said to her, "Give me a drink," for his disciples had gone away into the city to buy food. So, notice 3 things here with what we've read so far. And again, the Bible's written because it wants us to get certain points. The words are not written randomly, or they're written for a purpose, they're written for a reason. And so notice what it says, he needed to go through Samaria. Jews normally avoided Samaria. This wasn't the usual route. It wasn't a comfortable route. But John said that Jesus needed to go. So number 1, Jesus chooses a place that others avoid. Are you picking up so far? Number 2, Jesus was being wearied from the journey, and thus he sat by the well. He's tired. He doesn't arrive powerful and commanding, but he sits. Number 2, listening begins by slowing down. By not being so busy. Number 3, notice who came to the well. A woman of Samaria came to draw water. When did she arrive? That's right, at the 6th hour, or about midday. So it wasn't a time when women would normally come. And most women would come in the early morning and the evening when the cool of the day. Noon suggests isolation. It suggests that she was an outcast. And before a word is spoken, we can already see that something here. Jesus had placed himself in a path where normally others would ignore this person, but not Jesus. So a woman of Samaria came to draw water. Jesus said to her, "Give me a drink." He doesn't open with a sermon. He doesn't confront her background. He doesn't announce who he is. He asks for water. Jesus begins with a request. And this shows that this can be an effective tool for connecting with others. In that culture, a Jewish man speaking to a Samaritan woman, It didn't normally happen. It was already crossing boundaries. But notice how Jesus crosses them. He doesn't cross them with authority, but he places himself in need. Listening with care begins with humility. He creates space for her to respond. He invites conversation. He invites conversation. Notice it continues on in verse 9. Then the woman of Samaria said to him, "How is it that you, being a Jew, ask a drink from me, a Samaritan woman? For Jews have no dealing with Samaritans." Well, friends, this is a very big understatement. Jews have no dealings with understatements. The hatred between Jews and Samaritans was so great that if a Samaritan walked past and their shadow fell on their food, they would pick up their bowl and they would tip it over because that food was no longer fit for eating. And so her first response to Jesus is what? Suspicion. She immediately names the divide in the room. Ethnicity, religion, history. This is not small talk that she begins with, but she talks about this centuries of tension compressed into one question. What matters for us is how Jesus responds. And I like this. He doesn't shut her down. He doesn't correct her tone. He allows her to say what she really thinks before he says anything more. Listening with care means allowing people to voice their objections without feeling the need to win the moment. Are you following? Verses 10 to 12. Jesus answered and said to her, "If you knew the gift of God, and who is it who says to you, 'Give me a drink,' you would have asked him, and he would have given you living water." And the woman said to him, "Sir, you have nothing to draw with, and the well is deep. Where then do you get that living water? Are you greater than our father Jacob, who gave us the well and drank from it for himself, as well as his sons and his livestock?" So notice here that what Jesus does in his response. He doesn't argue with history. He doesn't defend his Jewish culture. Instead, he gently shifts the conversation upward. If you knew the gift of God. He moves from the surface issue to a deeper one. Without dismissing her question, he introduced something greater. But he does it in a way that invites curiosity rather than confrontation. And I love this. Jesus was a master of relationship. Why? Because he loved this woman. He loved her. Even though she was an outcast, even though she was a Samaritan, he didn't care. Jesus loved her. And look at her reaction. She stays literal. She focuses on the well, the bucket, the depth. And then she raises another barrier. Are you greater than our father Jacob? The tension rises. She questions his authority. And still, Jesus keeps the conversation going. Listening with care does not panic when someone misunderstands you. It stays steady long enough to move from water to living water. And that's the goal, friends. John 4, verses 13 to 15. Notice. Jesus answered and said to her, "Whoever drinks of this water will thirst again. But whoever drinks of the water that I shall give him will never thirst. But the water that I shall give him will become in him a fountain of water springing up into everlasting life." And the woman said to him, "Sir, give me this water, that I might not thirst, nor come here to draw." So again, Jesus does not rush the conversation. He builds it. He stays with her metaphor. He takes the ordinary object in front and he slowly deepens it. He contrasts physical thirst with something deeper. Everyone understands thirst. Everyone understands returning again and again to the same well. And then he introduces the idea of a different kind of water. Not external, but internal. Not temporary, but lasting. Her response shows that she is still thinking practically. Sir, give me this water, that I might not thirst, nor come here to draw. You can see in that statement how much that walking in the middle of the day, all on her own, hurt her. Wow. She hears convenience, but he is speaking about transformation. And still he does not correct her sharply. He allows the misunderstanding to sit for a moment. Listening with care does not force clarity too quickly. It walks someone step by step until they are ready to see more. Notice again how Jesus continues. And I love this picture that Jesus knows something more than what ordinary people can see. But Jesus knows. Verse 16, Jesus said to her, "Go call your husband and come here." And the woman answered and said, "I have no husband." Jesus said to her, "You have said well, I have no husband, for you have had 5 husbands, and the one whom you now have is not your husband. In that you spoke truly." So up to this point, the conversation had stayed about wells and water, but now Jesus talks about the real issue here. But notice how he does it. He doesn't expose her publicly. He doesn't shame her. He doesn't raise his voice. He invites honesty. He says, "Go call your husband." And when she gives a partial truth, he affirms and says, "You have said well." He names her reality without that humiliation. Listening with care does not avoid speaking the truth, but it introduces it at the right moment, in the right way, after trust has been built. And this is not confirmation for the sake of winning, it's direction for the sake of healing. And I like that. Jesus is asking this for a reason. He's got a purpose. Jesus always has a purpose. It's amazing. Verse 19. The woman said to him, "Sir, I perceive that you are a" what? "A prophet. Our fathers worshipped on this mountain, and you Jews say that in Jerusalem is the place where one ought to worship." So, what does she do here? She changes the subject. She changes the subject. She knows, hang on, I'm feeling a bit uncomfortable here. This is trotting on my toes. I know my sin. You don't have to point it out again. And so she changes the subject. And this is a common human move, that when someone gets too close, we like to shift to safer ground. Debate feels more manageable than exposure. But notice what Jesus does. He does not accuse her of deflecting. He does not force her back to the previous statement. He follows her into the theological question and keeps the conversation going. Listening with care means recognizing deflection without humiliation, and Jesus allows the conversation to move forward, even if it takes a slightly different path, because he is still guiding towards the truth. And notice this, verse 21. Jesus said to her, "Woman, believe me, the hour is coming when you will neither on this mountain nor in Jerusalem worship the Father. You worship what you do not know. We know what we worship, for salvation is of the Jews. But the hour is coming, and now is, when the true worshippers will worship the Father in spirit and truth. For the Father is seeking such to worship him." Oh, I love that phrase. Have you thought about it before? For the Father is seeking such. He is the Good Shepherd. God is spirit, and those who worship him must worship in spirit and truth. Jesus does not stay in the debate about geography. He lifts the conversation higher. He acknowledges reality, salvation is of the Jews, but then he moves beyond the location of the relationship to the relationship, the location to the relationship. The issue is no longer which mountain, the issue is the heart. The heart. Notice the phrase, the Father is seeking. I love it. Even here, Jesus is revealing the character of God. Notice the character of God. The Father is not waiting to reject. The Father is not waiting to criticize. The Father is not waiting with a big stick. He is seeking worshipers. Listening with care allows Jesus to take a defensive theological argument and turn it into a revelation about the heart of God. Wow. He has guided the conversation from water to thirst to truth to worship. And now the final step is about to happen. Notice what it says, verse 25 and 26. The woman said to him, I know that Messiah is coming, who is called Christ. When he comes, he will tell us all things. Jesus said to her, I who speak to you am he. Do you see what Jesus is doing here? After all that conversation, after the suspicion, the misunderstanding, the deflection, the theology, and truth, Jesus finally reveals who he is. He did not begin with this. How effective do you think it would have been if Jesus said this right at the start in verse 7? How effective would that have been? I don't think it would have been effective at all, friends. It took that wrestle, it took that conversation, it took that relationship to grow, that listening that Jesus did. He waited, he listened, he built trust. And when her heart was open enough to speak about the Messiah, he answered plainly, I who speak to you am he. He's saying, I'm more than a prophet. I'm more than a prophet. Listening with care, it does not delay the truth, it prepares the ground for it. Before Jesus gave her the living water, he gives her his attention. And when the moment was right, he revealed himself clearly. The woman said to him, I know that the Messiah is coming, who is called Christ. When he comes, he will tell us all things. And notice the result there, friends. Notice the result. Verse 28. The woman then left her water pot, went her way into the city, and said to the men, come see a man who told me all things that I ever did. Could this be the Christ? Then they went out of the city and came to him. And verse 39. And many of the Samaritans of that city believed in him because of the word of the woman who testified, he told me all that I ever did. She leaves the very thing that she came for. The water pot becomes irrelevant. Notice what she says. She doesn't say, he condemned me. She does not say, he exposed me. She says, he told me all things. She felt known and not rejected. Listening led to honesty. Honesty led to revelation. And revelation led to witness. I like that. There's a progression there, friends. There's a progression. There's a progression. Many of us, we want to go straight to witnessing. But there's a reason Jesus did it this way. And there's much that we can learn. Before there was evangelism, there was first attention. There was first listening. And the city comes to Jesus because one woman was listened to properly. Before we talk about how to listen, I want you to remember who Jesus chose to listen to, because so often we skip over that. Again, this was a Samaritan woman who was standing alone at noon, drawing water alone. She was carrying a past that likely everybody knew about and avoided. Every sentence she spoke carried layers of social tension, religious history, and personal complexity. She was not the easy conversation. Are you following? She was not the safe conversation. Most people would have kept their distance. And you see that with how the disciples thought among themselves. Why is he speaking to her? Why is he speaking to her? I didn't read it, but you can read it yourself. Most people would have kept their distance. Most people probably already had. But Jesus did not. He did not hurry the exchange so that he could move on. He did not expose her history to win the moment. He did not argue with her into agreement or force her into a confession out of her. No, he just remained. He stayed long enough for honesty to surface and for truth to take root without crushing her dignity. That kind of listening is not accidental politeness. Are you following? It's deliberate love. And that's why I love Jesus. Because he sees us the way we are. If Jesus so chose to listen to someone like her, then the question shifts to us. Who does Jesus want us to listen to? Who are we willing to sit with? It is easy to listen to people who think like us, and who make us comfortable. That requires very little grace. But what about the person who drains you? What about the person who talks too much? What about the person who pushes back or carries baggage that you would rather not deal with? We may reject them outright and we limit their time. Oh, I'm too busy. I'm too busy. We keep it shallow. We just talk about the weather. Nice rain, eh? Then we move on quickly. Listening with care begins when we stop deciding in advance who is worth our attention. Wow. We may not reject them outright, but we limit the time, we keep it shallow, and we move on quickly. And I saw this week. This week I was there for ministers' meetings at near Atkinson's Dam. There's a boys' brigade campground there. And there were two men who did the cooking for us, wonderful chefs, wonderful cooks. But they were tattooed head to toe, and they lived a different lifestyle than all the Seventh-day Adventist pastors that were there. But through these 3 days that we were there was a young man there who had conversations with many of the pastors as he was serving or as they were talking and these were not easy conversations. He was really challenging these pastors. Obviously, I don't know what background that he had, but he says, I'm not Christian. I'm definitely not Seventh-day Adventist. And he said topics like the mark of the beast is the manipulation of the genetic code of humans and stuff like that. And that Seventh-day Adventists are not keeping the health message because they're eating too much processed foods and, just light topics and stuff like that. And I noticed that as he was talking about, and all these different things, as he was talking, some pastors were quick to defend, and they were quick to have an answer because they knew everything, and they were quick to, respond and defend. And I noticed that when they did that, the conversation didn't keep on going. It shut down quite quickly. But I noticed that other pastors, when they listened more than they talked, he kept on talking. He kept on opening up. And I saw relationships start to deepen. And it was happening in real time, friends, in those short days that it was there. And I saw that after they talked 5-10 minutes while they were serving food and the pastor is waiting there talking, that he said, thank you. Thank you for listening. Thank you for this conversation that we had. He was thankful that somebody who was listening was willing to listen. And that's what it's about, friends. So that's what it's about. When the pastor listened more than talked, he opened up. And that's what I'm talking about here. So here's some tips for listening. Do you all know how to listen? Yeah. But how much more deeper can we go? When you're in a conversation, don't just listen for statements and facts. Listen for clues. So when they're talking, listen for history. Listen for where they've come from and what shaped them. So start with the first H, listen for history, because this gives a bit of background, gives a bit of depth. Then listen for heart. So what do they care about? What excites them? What frustrates them? Are you following? So we're going a bit deeper here. And so again, history, heart. So again, not just facts, not just the weather. Then listen for habits. What patterns keep showing up in their life? And that will tell you something about them. When they say, I go to the gym 3 times a week, what is that telling you? It tells you that their health is important to them. It tells you that, they want to be healthier, they want to be stronger, they want to live longer. And so these are clues for their life. Are you following? Then fourth, listen to their hurts. Where do their tone and emotions shift? What topic carries weight? Follow along. You're not interrogating, that's not the whole point. You're paying attention. You're listening for them, wanting to get to know them more. Most people will tell you what matters to them within 5 minutes if you listen closely enough. If you are still at a surface conversation with somebody and you've known them for less than a year, something's wrong. Maybe you've been talking too much. Maybe you need to be listening more. Are you following? But that's it. Just 4 things. History, heart, what was the 4th? Habits. Look at you. Have you written this down? Somebody. And hurts. And hurts. That's it. And again, there's not a formula to it. It's just, these help us to remember. Go a bit deeper. Go a bit deeper. And if you don't know how to begin a conversation, I learned a simple acronym, FORD. What does the F stand for? Family. That's it. Ask them about their family. First ask them their name. That's always a good thing to start with. But then ask their family. Are you married? You got children, etc.? And if you see them light up, then you know that's their heart. That's important to them. Or if they say, I don't have much family anymore. My kids have left and whatever. You kind of get a bit of that. Then you go a bit further. What's the O stand for? Occupation. You're so smart. So smart. That's it. Occupation. So you can ask them about their job. You ask them what they do. And if they're retired, you say, what did you used to do again? And this is a real good one for men because, again, we keep a lot of our, identity with our occupation. And unfortunately, many men who retire really struggle because we lose a lot of our identity. But that shouldn't be. Brothers, we're more than our jobs. I want to tell you that straight. You are more than your job. What does R stand for? Recreation. Oh, I'm preaching to the choir here. Recreation. What do you do when you're not working? What do you love to do? How do you like to spend your time? And then again, sometimes they really brighten up. I love trains. I had a friend who likes trains, and he said, I go and wake up early in the morning to go and see this old steam train come about. I said, wow, okay. I'm not interested in trains, but he was. And I said, I'd like to go with you one day. I never got to go with him, but that was his interest. So again, when people light up, you see. And then the final one, what's it stand for? Dreams. So wonderful. Dreams. What are you looking forward to? What do you want to do in the future? If you had unlimited money, What would you like to do? Wow, and then you really see the heart of people. When money is not an object, you go really deeper. But you don't jump straight to dreams unless you know them well and you've built their relationship over time. You build it up. You build it up. And that's how relationships deeper. That's how trust builds. Listening with care means being genuinely interested in the person in front of you. Not just steering the conversation where you want it to go. When you know someone a little, you don't need dramatic questions, you just need follow-ups. So if they mention work, don't stop at, well, how's work? But what's different about work lately for you? You know, if they describe or talk about family troubles, well, don't change the topic because it feels uncomfortable. You say, well, how's that affecting everyone? Become a master of asking good questions. Not an interrogator, follow me along, but just listening, because it opens up when we ask good questions. If they describe an event, go one step further. Say, how would you handle it differently? Are you happy that those things happened? Or, oh, that was quite painful, huh? Most conversations stay shallow because we move on too quickly. We want to change the topic. We want to jump to the next thing. Oh, I'm not interested in that. Well, they might be. They might be. Depth often comes from just asking one extra question. And not a yes and no question, but something that will open up more. And staying on topic as well. So when they express a strong view or belief, resist the urge to respond immediately. And instead ask, how did you come to that conclusion? What led you to see it that way? When people ask, I don't believe in God, a good question to ask is, tell me about the God that you don't believe in. Because maybe I don't believe in that God either. And they say, what? You're a Christian and you don't believe in God? Yeah. If you're talking about a God that hates people and that punishes people eternity for just 100 years of sin, then I don't believe in that God either. And so you can go deeper. But just asking questions rather than saying, well, let me tell you about God because you don't believe in them. Why don't we listen first? And that's what I'm talking about, friends, going a bit deeper. So when we ask that question, what led you to see it that way? It does not attack. It clarifies. And it slows down the exchange and it helps us to understand the reasoning before you offer your own. Listening with care means staying long enough to understand both their experience and their thinking. Listening with care is not turning the conversation into an investigation. It's not asking question after question so they feel analysed. It's not about collecting information so you can have a better rebuttal. It's not pretending to listen while you're waiting for a moment to speak. If your goal is to win the argument, the other person will feel it. If your goal is to understand, they will feel it too. Listening with care is not strategic manipulation. It's genuine attention given without an agenda in the moment. Listening is how relationships are built. It's how strangers become acquaintances. It's how acquaintances become friends and trusted voices. It's how distance begins to close and connections begin to form. And when someone realizes that you're not rushing them or correcting them or competing with them, something shifts, guards lower, honesty increases, respect grows. Listening is not just about getting information, it's about strengthening connection. And without connection, influence is shallow and truth struggles to land. If we want to bless people this year, it will not begin with better arguments. It will begin with stronger relationships. And stronger relationships are built through consistent, careful listening. So this week, I want to encourage you to choose just one person. Not 10, but just one. And have a conversation with them where you listen. And you listen not to impress or to correct or to persuade, but just to understand. And then ask one thoughtful follow-up question. and stay long enough to hear the real answer. You don't need to force the gospel at that moment, friends. You don't need to win the discussion. Just build the relationship, because love begins with listening. And I want to finish with this last verse. My dear brothers and sisters, take note of this. Everyone should be what? Quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. Let's be those people this week. That's my prayer.